The conference room erupted in laughter as Marcus Sterling delivered his final verdict, his perfectly manicured hands clasped together like a judge passing sentence. "I'm sorry, Nathan, but we've decided to restructure the department. Your position has been eliminated." I sat there, feeling the weight of 20 sets of eyes on me, each pair gleaming with barely concealed amusement. After 15 years of dedication to Sterling Industries, of 60-hour weeks and sacrificed weekends, it had come to this, a public execution disguised as a corporate restructuring. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm the only one who knows the infrastructure. "We'll manage," Marcus cut me off, his smile widening. Behind him, my former colleagues, people I'd mentored, trained, helped climb the corporate ladder, struggled to suppress their grins. Rachel from accounting actually had to cover her mouth. Tom from operations was texting under the table, probably spreading the news already. Before we begin this journey of corporate justice and sweet revenge, I want to thank each of you for being part of this incredible community. If you're enjoying these stories of triumph over workplace injustice, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us continue bringing you these tales of empowerment. Now let's dive into Nathan's story. "Security will escort you out within the hour," Marcus continued, sliding a pathetic severance package across the table. "We appreciate your contributions." The way he said contributions made it sound like I'd been fetching coffee for 15 years instead of building the entire IT infrastructure that kept Sterling Industries running. I'd designed their systems from the ground up, implemented security protocols that saved them millions, created proprietary software that gave them a competitive edge. But none of that mattered now. As I stood to leave, David Chen, my former protégé, actually snickered. "Don't worry, Nathan. I'm sure someone will appreciate your vintage skill set." Vintage. I was 42, not ancient. But in the tech world of Sterling Industries, apparently that made me a dinosaur. Never mind that I'd forgotten more about systems architecture than David would ever know. The walk to my office, former office, felt like a funeral march. Through the glass walls I could see employees pretending to work while stealing glances at me. The news had already spread through the corporate grapevine. Nathan Cross, the senior systems architect who'd been with the company since its startup days, was being shown the door. I began packing my things under the watchful eye of Carl, the security guard who'd greeted me warmly every morning for over a decade. Now he stood stiffly by the door, avoiding eye contact. 15 years, Carl," I said quietly, placing my family photo in a box. My wife Sarah's smile seemed to mock me from the frame. How was I going to tell her? Our daughter Emma was starting college next year. The mortgage on our house had 3 years left. My mother's care facility bills arrived like clockwork every month. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross," Carl muttered, still not meeting my eyes. "Just following orders." As I packed, I couldn't help but notice the Infrastructure Excellence Award on my wall, presented just 6 months ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Excellence apparently had an expiration date. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "How's the presentation going?" "Kill it, honey." She thought I was presenting the quarterly projections today. Instead, I was being killed by them. Another buzz, this time from our corporate Slack channel. I shouldn't have looked, but morbid curiosity won. The messages were already flying. "Heard Cross got the axe. About time, lol. Guess his revolutionary ideas weren't so revolutionary. Dead weight finally cut loose. Drinks tonight to celebrate the restructuring?" I closed the app, my hands trembling slightly, not from sadness, from rage. Pure crystalline rage that I carefully tucked away behind a mask of professional composure. 5 minutes, Mr. Cross," Carl announced. I nodded, placing the last of my personal items in the box. 15 years reduced to a cardboard container. As I lifted it, something caught my eye, a USB drive tucked behind my monitor. Not just any drive. This one contained something I'd been working on in my spare time, something that could change everything. I palmed it discreetly, slipping it into my pocket. The elevator ride down felt eternal. At each floor, employees got on, saw me with my box and Carl standing guard, and suddenly found the floor numbers fascinating. The whispers started before the doors even closed. In the lobby, I found Marcus waiting with several members of the leadership team. A final humiliation then. "Nathan, he said loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "I want you to know this isn't personal. It's just business. The company needs fresh perspectives, new blood. You understand? Fresh perspectives, new blood. Corporate speak for younger and cheaper." "I understand perfectly," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Good, good." He shifted uncomfortably under my stare. "Well, best of luck with your future endeavors. I'm sure you'll land on your feet, eventually." The way he said eventually made it clear he thought I'd be lucky to find work at a help desk. Behind him, Rachel whispered something to Tom, and they both chuckled. I walked through those gleaming doors for the last time, the October sun harsh against my face. My car, the sensible sedan I'd bought instead of the sports car I'd wanted because I was being responsible, sat in the parking lot like a monument to my middling middle management existence. But as I placed the box in the trunk, my fingers found the USB drive in my pocket. They thought they knew Nathan Cross. They thought I was just another aging tech worker, easily replaceable, forgettable. They had no idea who they'd just unleashed. I sat in my car for a moment, watching Sterling Industries' glass facade reflect the afternoon sun. Through those windows I could see the conference room where they'd laughed at my termination. In 6 months, maybe less, they'd be having a very different kind of meeting in that room. My phone rang. "Sarah, hey honey, how did the presentation go?" I started the engine, a strange calm settling over me. "It went exactly as planned. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Marcus and his crew through the lobby windows, toasting with what looked like champagne, celebrating their successful restructuring, celebrating my demise. Let them celebrate, let them laugh, let them think they'd won. Because Nathan Cross, the dinosaur with the vintage skill set, had just been given the greatest gift imaginable: freedom and motivation. The USB drive felt warm in my pocket, its contents humming with possibility. They'd taken my job, my security, my dignity, but they'd failed to take the one thing that mattered most: my knowledge of every weakness in their system, every skeleton in their digital closet, every vulnerability they didn't even know existed. More importantly, they'd failed to realize that the vintage engineer they'd just discarded had spent the last 3 years developing something revolutionary, something that would make Sterling Industries' entire business model obsolete. I'd been loyal, I'd been dedicated, I'd been the good employee who put company first. Now I was going to be their worst nightmare. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Sarah's car already there. Early day at the hospital, apparently. I sat for a moment preparing myself for the conversation ahead, but something had shifted during that drive home. The humiliation was transforming into something else, something harder, something with teeth. I walked through my front door carrying that cardboard box, but I wasn't carrying defeat. I was carrying the seeds of Sterling Industries' destruction. They just didn't know it yet. "Nathan?" Sarah called from the kitchen. "You're home early. How did everything go?" I set the box down in the hallway, pulled out the USB drive, and held it up to the light. Such a small thing to hold such massive potential. "Everything went perfectly," I called back, and for the first time since Marcus had delivered his verdict, I smiled. A real smile, the kind that would have worried him if he'd seen it. They'd laughed when I lost my job, but I wondered how hard they'd be laughing when I owned theirs. The aroma of coffee filled the kitchen as Sarah turned from the stove, her smile faltering as she saw my expression. 20 years of marriage had taught her to read the Wimyoda signs, the tension in my shoulders, the way I held myself too carefully, like I might shatter if I moved too quickly. "What happened?" She set down her coffee mug, her nurse's instincts kicking in, already diagnosing the problem before I'd said a word. I placed the box on our kitchen table, the same table where we'd celebrated my promotion to senior systems architect 5 years ago. The same table where Emma had done her homework while I worked late into the night, connected to Sterling Industries servers, fixing problems that no one else could solve. "They let me go," I said simply. "Restructuring." The word hung in the air between us like a physical thing. Sarah's hand went to her mouth, her eyes widening, but what struck me wasn't shock, it was recognition. As if she'd been expecting this, waiting for this shoe to drop. "Those bastards," she whispered, sinking into a chair. "After everything you've done for them." "Apparently everything I've done is now vintage," I said, attempting levity that fell flat. "My skill set is outdated, they need fresh perspectives." "Fresh perspectives?" Sarah's voice rose. "You built their entire infrastructure. You worked 60-hour weeks. You missed Emma's recitals, our anniversaries, your father's funeral prep because Marcus said the company needed you. The mention of my father stopped me cold. He'd died 2 years ago, and I'd spent his final days debugging a critical system failure instead of being at his bedside. Marcus had promised that loyalty would be rewarded. That sacrifice meant something. "How's the severance?" Sarah asked, ever practical. 2 months. 2 months? She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. After 15 years, they give you 2 months. It's industry standard, I heard myself saying, then wondered why I was defending them. Industry standard, my ass. Sarah rarely swore, but when she did, it meant business. What about our savings? I'd done the math on the drive home. We have 6 months of expenses saved, maybe 8 if we're careful. But with Emma's tuition next year, Mom's care facility, we'll figure it out, Sarah said, but I could see the worry creasing her forehead. She made good money as an ICU nurse, but it wasn't enough to carry everything alone. "There's something else," I said, pulling out the USB drive. Before I left, I grabbed this. "What is it?" "A project I've been working on. After hours on my own time using my own resources." I turned the drive over in my fingers. It's a new type of systems architecture. Something that could revolutionize how companies handle their IT infrastructure. Sarah leaned forward, and Sterling doesn't know about it. I was planning to present it to them next quarter, was going to be my ticket to the C-suite. I laughed bitterly. Guess that's not happening now. Good, Sarah said firmly. They don't deserve it. What will you do with it? Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Emma bounded in, still in her high school volleyball uniform, her face flushed with excitement. "Dad, you're home early." She stopped short, seeing the box on the table, the USB drive in my hand, the expression on her mother's face. "What's wrong?" I've always believed in honesty with Emma. She was 17, old enough to understand, mature enough to handle truth. "I lost my job today, sweetheart." The excitement drained from her face. "What? But you're like the most important person there. You always said the whole system would crash without you." Apparently they're willing to test that theory. Emma sank into a chair, her volleyball bag hitting the floor with a thud. "This is such bullshit." She caught her mother's look. "Sorry, but it is. Remember last month when their servers crashed at 3 a.m. and Dad had to fix it? Remember when he worked through Christmas because they had that security breach?" "Emma, no, Mom, this is wrong." Tears were forming in her eyes. "Dad gave them everything, everything, and they just threw him away?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "Hey, look at me. We're going to be fine. This might actually be a good thing. How is losing your job a good thing?" I held up the USB drive, because now I'm free to do something with this, something big. Emma wiped her eyes. "What is it?" "The future," I said, and for the first time since leaving Sterling Industries, I actually believed it. We spent the rest of the evening as a family, something that had become rare in recent years. Sarah made her famous stress response meal, spaghetti carbonara, with garlic bread. Emma told us about making varsity volleyball. We didn't talk about money or jobs or the future. For a few hours, we just existed together. But later that night, after Emma had gone to bed and Sarah was in the shower, I sat in my home office, a generous term for the converted bedroom where I'd spent countless nights working for Sterling Industries. I plugged in the USB drive and opened the files. 2 years of work blazed across my screen. Code that could reduce IT infrastructure costs by 70%. Systems that self-healed, self-optimized, self-evolved. Architecture that made current industry standards look like cave paintings. I'd created this for Sterling Industries. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every line of code had been intended to cement my value to the company, to make myself indispensable. Instead, they'd dispensed with me. My phone buzzed. LinkedIn notifications were already pouring in. Word travels fast in the tech community. Former colleagues reaching out with sympathetic messages, competitors sniffing around to see if I was available, recruiters smelling blood in the water. I ignored them all and opened a new document. "Business plan," I typed at the top. Then, after a moment's thought, I added a subtitle, "How to Destroy Sterling Industries." Too dramatic. I deleted it and tried again. "Cross-tech solutions. Revolutionizing IT infrastructure." Better, professional. But as I stared at the cursor blinking on the empty page, I thought about Marcus's smirk, Rachel's covered laugh, David's vintage comment, the champagne toast I'd witnessed as I drove away. I closed the document and opened another. This one I titled simply, "The Plan." and I began to write. Not a business plan, that would come later. This was something else, a roadmap, a careful dissection of Sterling Industries' vulnerabilities, which I knew better than anyone. Their outdated contracts, their vendor dependencies, their security weaknesses that I'd repeatedly warned them about, only to be told that fixes weren't in the budget. Most importantly, I wrote about their clients, the relationships I'd built over 15 years, the CTOs and IT directors who called me directly when they had problems because they knew I'd solve them, the trust I'd earned that Sterling Industries had taken for granted. By 3 a.m., I had 20 pages. By dawn, I had a complete strategic analysis of how a small, agile competitor could systematically dismantle Sterling Industries' market share. Sarah found me there, still typing, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered notes. "Did you sleep at all?" "Couldn't," I admitted. "Too many ideas." She looked over my shoulder at the screen, reading quickly. Her eyebrows rose. "This is comprehensive. It's a start. Nathan." She put her hands on my shoulders. "I need you to be honest with me. Is this about building something new, or is this about revenge?" I spun my chair around to face her. My wonderful practical wife who'd stood by me through everything, who deserved the truth. "Both," I said. "Is that wrong?" She considered this, absently massaging my shoulders. "They humiliated you. They used you up and threw you away. They laughed at you." Her hands tightened. "So no, I don't think it's wrong. I think it's justice. It won't be easy. Starting a company, competing with Sterling. When has anything worth doing been easy?" She leaned down and kissed my forehead. "You've got the knowledge, you've got the drive, you've got the technology, and you've got us. That's more than Marcus Sterling had when he started his company with his daddy's money." She was right. Marcus had inherited his position sliding into the CEO chair when his father retired. He'd never built anything from scratch, never risked anything real. Everything had been handed to him on a silver platter, including the company I'd helped build. "I'll need startup capital," I said. "The severance won't be enough." "What about your 401k? Early withdrawal penalties would kill us, plus we need that for the future." "The future is now, Nathan." Sarah's voice was firm. "Take the penalty. We'll rebuild. Besides," she smiled grimly, "when you own Sterling Industries, I'm sure you'll be able to afford a nice retirement package. When I own—" I trailed off, the audacity of the statement hitting me. "Oh, honey," Sarah's smile widened. "You didn't think I married you for your lack of ambition, did you? I've watched you build miracles for other people for 15 years. It's time you built one for yourself." She left me there, staring at my screen, her words echoing in my mind. Own Sterling Industries. It seemed impossible, absurd. But then again, they'd thought it was absurd that a kid from a working-class family could become their senior systems architect. They'd thought it was impossible that someone without an Ivy League degree could design architecture that outperformed anything their consultants created. I'd spent my career making the impossible possible, for them. Now it was time to do it for myself. I opened a new spreadsheet and began calculating. 401k early withdrawal, home equity line of credit, personal savings. If we liquidated everything, took every risk, leveraged every asset, we'd have 6 months, maybe 7. 6 months to build a company that could challenge a corporation worth hundreds of millions. 6 months to turn my USB drive of dreams into a market reality. 6 months to transform from Nathan Cross, unemployed IT architect, into Nathan Cross, CEO of Sterling Industries' worst nightmare. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the LinkedIn messages until I found the one I was looking for. James Chen. Not David, despite the similar surname. A brilliant developer I'd tried to hire at Sterling Industries 3 years ago. Marcus had vetoed it, saying James was too unconventional. "Hey James," I typed. "Remember that revolutionary architecture we discussed at the conference in Vegas? I'm finally in a position to build it. Interested in changing the world." His response came within minutes, despite the early hour. "Nathan? Holy shit. Yes, when do we start?" And just like that, I had my first employee. Well, partner. I couldn't afford employees yet. The sun was fully up now, streaming through my office window. Somewhere across the city, Marcus Sterling was probably just arriving at his corner office, settling into his leather chair, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed another record profit. He thought he'd eliminated a problem yesterday, cut loose dead weight, streamlined his operations. He had no idea he'd just created his replacement. I saved all my files, backed them up to 3 different secure cloud services, and finally stood up. My knees protested. I wasn't 25 anymore. despite what Marcus thought about fresh perspectives, but I was something better than 25. I was experienced, I was motivated, I was angry, and I had absolutely nothing left to lose. "Sarah?" I called out, walking toward the kitchen where I could smell fresh coffee brewing. "How do you feel about converting the garage into an office?" "Already cleared it with the HOA while you were typing," she called back. "Emma's getting ready to help you move your stuff. She says if you're going to destroy Sterling Industries, you need a proper war room." War room? I liked that, because this was war. Marcus Sterling had fired the first shot when he'd eliminated my position, when he'd humiliated me in front of my colleagues, when he'd laughed at my 15 years of dedication. But wars aren't won with the first shot. They're won by the person who's still standing at the end, and I had every intention of being that person. I found Sarah and Emma in the kitchen, already making plans. Emma had her laptop out, researching small business requirements. Sarah was on her phone, talking to someone about small business loans. "Mom's friend at the credit union," Emma explained. "She says with your track record and a solid business plan, you could qualify for a startup loan." My family, my incredible, wonderful family. While I'd been plotting corporate destruction, they'd been building foundations. Also, Emma added, not looking up from her screen, "I may have already bought the domain name crosstechsolutions.com, and .net, and .org. You know, just in case." "With what money?" I asked, though I was touched by the gesture. "My volleyball camp savings," she said simply. "Consider it an investment. I expect equity." "Emma, you can't." "Dad." She looked up at me with eyes that were far too wise for 17. "You missed my games to keep Sterling Industries running. You worked weekends and holidays for them. You gave them everything." Her voice hardened. "So now we're going to take everything back, as a family." Sarah nodded. "Cross Industries has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" "I was thinking Cross-Tech Solutions," I said. "Think bigger," Sarah said. "You're not just solving IT problems, you're going to solve Sterling Industries' existence problem." I looked at my wife and daughter, these fierce warriors I was lucky enough to call family. Sterling Industries had made a fatal error. They thought they were just firing Nathan Cross, aging IT architect. They'd actually fired Nathan Cross, future CEO. Nathan Cross, who knew where all their digital bodies were buried. Nathan Cross, who had the backing of the two most formidable women in the city. Nathan Cross, who was about to show them exactly what a dinosaur could do when cornered. "All right," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee with hands that were finally steady. "Let's build an empire." Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across our suburban street. It was a new day, a new beginning. And somewhere in his corner office, Marcus Sterling had no idea that his corporate death warrant had just been signed. Not with a pen, but with a USB drive and the fury of a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. 3 weeks into unemployment, I stood in what used to be our garage, now transformed into the headquarters of Crosstech Solutions. The oil stains on the concrete floor were covered by cheap area rugs from the clearance section. Extension cords snaked across makeshift desks built from doors and sawhorses. It wasn't Silicon Valley chic, but it was ours. "Okay, everyone, gather round," I called out to my team of 5, all former Sterling Industries employees who'd been restructured over the past 2 years. James Chen looked up from his triple monitor setup, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Please tell me you've got good news." My wife's starting to ask questions about why I'm working in someone's garage. "Better than good," I said, holding up a folder. "I just got off the phone with Robert McKay from Pinnacle Healthcare." The room went silent. Pinnacle Healthcare was Sterling Industries' third-largest client, worth about $8 million annually to their bottom line. "No way," whispered Lisa Park, our database specialist. She'd been let go from Sterling a year ago for being overqualified, Marcus's code for too expensive. "Robert's been unhappy with Sterling's response times lately," I continued, savoring the moment. "Apparently, since they restructured their tech department, system failures that used to be fixed in hours are now taking days." "Imagine that," Tom Watanabe muttered from his security station. "Fire all your experienced people and service quality drops." Who could have predicted that? I opened the folder, revealing a letter of intent. "He wants a proposal from us. Full infrastructure management, security protocols, the works. If we can demonstrate our capabilities, we're looking at a 3-year contract." Maya Martinez, our sales lead, whistled low. "That's got to be worth $4 million annually," I finished. "Half of what they pay Sterling, but with our lean operation, it would be pure profit after overhead." "Sterling's going to lose their minds," James said, a grin spreading across his face. "That's the idea," I replied, pinning the letter to our achievement board, right next to the photo Emma had taken of Sterling Industries building. Our daily reminder of the goal. How do we handle the infrastructure? Asked Ben Cooper, our youngest team member at 25. Sterling had hired him straight from college, worked him 90-hour weeks, then fired him for lack of leadership potential when he asked for work-life balance. That's where this comes in, I said, pulling out the USB drive that had started it all. Our proprietary architecture. I've spent the last 3 weeks refining it. We can deliver enterprise-level service using 1/10 of the hardware Sterling uses. You mean we can actually run Pinnacle's entire operation from this? Lisa gestured around our garage office. The beauty of cloud hybrid architecture, I confirmed. We don't need a glass tower. We need brains, innovation, and the ability to deliver what we promise. My phone buzzed. Sarah's text. Channel 6 Business News. Now. I grabbed the remote and turned on the small TV we'd mounted in the corner. The business anchor was mid-story. Sterling Industries announced unexpected third-quarter losses today, citing temporary service disruptions and client retention challenges. CEO Marcus Sterling assured investors these were minor setbacks. The camera cut to Marcus outside Sterling Industries. His usual swagger noticeably diminished. We're experiencing some growing pains as we integrate our new, more dynamic workforce. These challenges are temporary, and we're confident. Turn it up, Maya said, leaning forward. Asked about reports that several major clients have expressed dissatisfaction with recent service levels. Sterling declined to comment specifically but emphasized the company's commitment to excellence. I muted the TV as the segment ended. Growing pains. That's what he calls losing 3 senior architects, 5 system engineers, and 2 security specialists in 6 months. Don't forget the 4 database admins, Lisa added. My friend Jennifer says they're running everything on manual backups now because no one knows how to fix the automated system. The one you designed? Tom asked me. The very same. I couldn't help but smile. I left documentation, of course, very thorough documentation, in a proprietary format that requires specialized knowledge to interpret. You beautiful bastard, James laughed. How long before they crack it? With their fresh perspectives and new blood. Should take them another month or 2. By then we'll have their clients, Maya finished. Speaking of which, I said, pulling up our project timeline on the whiteboard, we have 72 hours to prepare the Pinnacle proposal. James, I need you to finish the automation protocols. Lisa, database architecture. Tom, security framework. Ben, you're on UI design. Make it so simple a CEO could use it without calling support. What about me? Maya asked. You're with me. We're visiting Robert McKay tomorrow. In person. At Pinnacle's headquarters. She raised an eyebrow. That's brave. Sterling has people there all the time. Good. Let them see us coming. The team dispersed to their stations, energy crackling through our makeshift office. This was what Sterling Industries had lost when they'd chased their experience out the door. Not just technical knowledge, but passion, purpose, the drive that comes from building something that matters. Yes, it has. I sat across from her. I remember when I first saw it, I knew it was perfect. Even though it needed so much work, Patricia's smile was condescending. Lucky that Robert had the vision to buy it. And the means, of course. I wanted to show her the closing documents with my name, the bank statements showing the cash purchase, the receipts for every renovation. Instead, I nodded. Very lucky. I've been thinking, Patricia said, setting the albums aside, about your trip to Sarah's. A week away sounds lovely. But are you sure you can afford it? I know how tight things can be on a limited budget. The woman wearing a $50,000 bracelet, bought with my money, was concerned about my budget. The irony was almost too rich. Sarah and I always split costs. I lied smoothly. It's quite affordable that way. Patricia studied me with sharp eyes. You know, Eleanor, I've always admired how well you've adapted to your circumstances. Not everyone could handle the adjustment from your background to ours with such grace. My background, orphaned at 16, put myself through college and business school, built a real estate empire from nothing. But to Patricia, I would always be the gold digger who'd trapped her precious son. We all adapt as needed, I replied. Speaking of which, how are your own adjustments going? Moving is such a big decision at any age. She stiffened. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, just what you mentioned last night about your house being too much to handle. I've been asking around about senior living communities. Some of them are quite luxurious now. Not at all like the old folks' homes of the past. Her face flushed. I am not looking at senior communities. Of course not, I soothed. I just thought, if you were downsizing, it might be an option. But a penthouse downtown sounds much more your style. So vibrant. So full of life. When were you thinking of making the move? Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It's not, where did you hear about a penthouse? Oh, you know how the club ladies talk. Victoria Ashworth mentioned you'd been looking at properties, the Meridian, wasn't it? Such a prestigious address. The Meridian was indeed prestigious, and I happened to know they required proof of assets before even showing unit. If Patricia had put down a deposit, she'd had to demonstrate significant liquid assets I was betting she didn't actually have. I should go, Patricia said abruptly, gathering her purse. Tell Robert I'll call him later. After she left, I retrieved the photo album she'd been examining. As I'd suspected, she'd been looking at pictures from the early days of the house, probably trying to establish some claim to its history. Several photos were missing. Ones that showed me directing contractors, signing papers, planting the garden. I went to my hidden office and pulled up the security footage from the afternoon. Patricia hadn't just taken photos, she'd also been in Robert's study, photographing documents. My documents, which Robert had filed away thinking they were his. The phone rang, interrupting my surveillance review. Marcus. I've finished the preliminary asset protection structure, he said. Everything's being transferred to the irrevocable trust as we discussed. Also, I did some digging on that penthouse Patricia put a deposit on. And she used a check from an account that lists Robert as co-signer. The deposit was $500,000. I sat back in my chair. They don't have that kind of liquid capital. No, they don't. Want to guess where the money came from? My blood ran cold. Tell me they didn't. A home equity line of credit on your house, taken out last month, co-signed by Robert using a power of attorney document that I'm betting you never signed. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this new betrayal. They weren't just planning to steal my house, they'd already started borrowing against it. Is the document legitimate? I asked finally. I'm having a forensic document examiner look at it. But Eleanor, even if it's forged, they've already received the funds. The bank approved it, based on Robert's claimed ownership. Which means when this all comes out, there's going to be a fraud investigation. Exactly. Your husband and mother-in-law aren't just planning a civil divorce action. They've crossed into criminal territory. I thought about Robert's nervous behavior, Patricia's increasing boldness. They were desperate, which meant they were dangerous. What do you recommend? I document everything. And I mean everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every movement. Build a case so airtight that when we present it, they have no room to maneuver. And in the meantime, play your part. Let them think they're winning. The more confident they get, the sloppier they'll become. After ending the call, I sat in my office until well past midnight, reviewing financial records and security footage. By the time Robert came home, smelling of whiskey and his mother's perfume, I had compiled enough evidence to bury them both. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. Like any good chess player, I knew the importance of positioning. Every piece needed to be in place before I made my final move. Eleanor, Robert called from downstairs. Are you awake? I closed my office door silently and made my way to our bedroom, slipping under the covers just as he appeared in the doorway. There you are, he said, his words slightly slurred. I was worried when you weren't downstairs. Just tired, I murmured. How was your evening? Good. Productive, he stumbled slightly as he undressed. Mother sends her regards. That's nice. I watched him in the darkness. This man I'd once loved. Robert? Mem? Do you ever think about our early day, when we first bought this house? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, sometimes, we were happy then, weren't we? We were. His voice was soft, almost vulnerable. Eleanor, What? Nothing. Just, I'm sorry. For what? But he was already snoring, leaving his apology unfinished. I lay awake beside him, wondering if somewhere deep down beneath his mother's influence, and his own greed, the man I'd married still existed. It didn't matter. Sorry wouldn't undo the forged documents or return the stolen money. Sorry wouldn't stop their plan to leave me homeless. But sorry might be all he had left when I was finished. 5 weeks until November, 5 weeks to gather the rest of my evidence, secure my assets, and prepare for the revelation that would destroy their carefully laid plan. I smiled in the darkness. They thought they were the hunters, stalking their prey. They had no idea they were walking into a trap of their own making. The third week of October brought an unexpected development. I was reviewing contracts in my hidden office when my security system alerted me to a visitor, not Patricia this time. A man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Through the camera feed, I watched Robert greet him at the door, glancing nervously over his shoulder before ushering him into the study. I activated the audio feed. "Mr. Morrison," the man said, settling into the leather chair I'd bought at an estate sale in Vermont. "I'm James Whitfield from Whitfield and Associates. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Of course," Robert replied, though his voice was tight. "You said it was urgent?" "Indeed, we need to discuss the timeline. My client is eager to proceed, but there are some complications with the property transfer we need to address." My blood chilled. Property transfer? I maximized the video feed, zooming in on the documents Whitfield was pulling from his briefcase. The title search revealed irregularities. Whitfield continued. "The property appears to be held in trust, not in your name directly as you indicated." I watched Robert's face cycle through several emotions: confusion, fear, then forced confidence. "That must be a mistake. I purchased this house before my marriage." "The records show otherwise, Mr. Morrison. The deed is registered to an LLC, ECM Holdings. Does that mean anything to you?" "Eleanor Chen Morrison Holdings, my company, using my initials and maiden name." Of course, Robert didn't recognize it. "There must be some confusion," Robert insisted. "Perhaps an old mortgage company. These things can get complicated." "Indeed they can." Whitfield's tone suggested he wasn't buying it. "However, my client is prepared to move forward with the purchase contingent on clear title. The offer remains at $3.2 million, with closing scheduled for November 15th. November 15th, 3 days after I was supposed to leave for Sarah's. They weren't just planning to lock me out, they were planning to sell my house from under me. "That timeline works perfectly," Robert said, relaxing slightly. "My wife will be traveling then, which will make the transition easier." "Your wife," Whitfield made a note. "She's on board with the sale?" "Absolutely. In fact, it was partly her idea. She's been wanting to downsize." I almost laughed at the audacity. Whitfield, however, seemed less amused. "I'll need her signature on several documents." "Of course. State law requires both spouses to sign off on the sale of a primary residence." "Of course," Robert agreed quickly. "I'll have her sign everything before she leaves." After Whitfield left, I watched Robert pace his study, phone pressed to his ear. "Patricia?" "No doubt." "No, Mother. I don't know what ECM Holdings is." His voice was panicked. "The lawyer says the house is owned by some trust." "What do you mean you'll handle it?" "Mother, this is serious." I closed the feeds and leaned back in my chair. They were trying to sell my house. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking, but it also presented an opportunity. Every document they forged, every lie they told, every step they took toward this sale was another nail in their legal coffin. I made a quick call to Marcus. "They're trying to sell the house. November 15th. Closing." "Jesus." He was quiet for a moment. "You know what this means. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery and attempted grand theft. At minimum, Eleanor. It might be time to involve law enforcement." "Not yet." I decided. "Let them dig deeper, but I want you to contact Whitfield and Associates." Anonymous tip about the sellers not having clear title. "Consider it done." That evening, I played the concerned wife to perfection. Robert came home with flowers. Guilty conscience blooming into grocery store roses. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Arranging them in a vase Patricia had given us for our anniversary." "Crystal," she'd claimed, though I knew it was glass. "Can't a man bring his wife flowers?" He kissed my cheek and I fought not to recoil. I was thinking we should do something special before your trip. Dinner at Le Bernardin. Our first date restaurant. The manipulation was almost touching in its transparency. That sounds lovely, I replied, though isn't it hard to get reservations? I'll manage. He was trying so hard to be charming. Eleanor, I know I haven't been the best husband lately, working too much, spending too much time with Mother. I want to make it up to you. Oh? I turned to face him fully. What brought this on? Just thinking about the future. About what's really important. He took my hands and I noticed his palms were sweating. You know I love you, right? I know you say you do. He flinched at that. I mean it, despite everything. I do love you. Despite everything. Despite planning to leave me homeless. Despite forging my signature. Despite stealing $500,000 against my house. I love you too. I lied smoothly. Why don't you make that reservation? We could go Friday. His relief was palpable. Friday it is. Patricia joined us for dinner that night. Her presence was becoming as regular as the sunrise. She swept in carrying a cake box from the expensive bakery downtown. I thought we needed something sweet, she announced, though her smile was anything but. Eleanor, you're looking tired. Are you feeling well? Just busy, I replied, serving the roast I'd prepared. I've been organizing things for my trip. Oh yes. Your trip. Patricia's eyes gleamed. You must be so excited, a whole week away from all your responsibilities here. Actually, I was thinking, I said casually, maybe I should postpone it. November's such a busy time, with Thanksgiving coming up. No, both Robert and Patricia spoke at once, then looked at each other awkwardly. I mean, Robert said quickly, you've been planning this for so long, Sarah would be disappointed. He's right, Patricia added. You can't let people down, Eleanor. It's important to keep your commitment. The irony of Patricia Morrison lecturing me about keeping commitments while actively planning to steal my home was not lost on me. You're probably right, I conceded. I'll stick to the plan. After dinner I excused myself to make a phone call to Sarah within earshot of course. I can't wait to see you, I said loudly enough for them to hear. A whole week of relaxation. Yes. November 10th through the 17th. No. Robert's being so supportive about it. When I returned to the dining room, they were huddled together over Patricia's phone whispering urgently. They broke apart as I entered. Everything set? Robert asked with false brightness. All confirmed, I smiled. Patricia, you'll keep an eye on Robert while I'm gone, won't you? Make sure he eats properly. Oh, I'll take very good care of him, she assured me. Don't you worry about a thing. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations, not for my trip. That fiction required minimal effort. But for what was to come, I met with 3 different attorneys. Not just market. I wanted multiple legal opinions. An airtight case that could be presented to both civil and criminal courts. I also hired a private investigator. Someone Marcus recommended, Diana Chen. No relation, despite the shared surname. Was a former FBI agent who specialized in financial crime. This is quite a case, she said, reviewing the documents I'd provided. We were meeting in a private room at my bank, away from any possibility of surveillance. Your husband and mother-in-law have been busy. What have you found? The Hullock isn't their first attempt. They tried to refinance the house 6 months ago, but were denied because they couldn't prove ownership. They've also been shopping around for buyers since August. August, 3 months of planning behind my back. What else? Diana slid a photograph across the table. It showed Patricia at a storage facility. She's been moving items from your house to this unit, small things. Artwork. Antiques. Jewelry she assumes is hers or her son's. I studied the photo, noting the Chagall sketch visible in Patricia's arm. A gift from my mentor. Worth more than Patricia's car. She has good taste at least. There's more. Diana pulled out another file. Patricia Morrison is broke. Her husband left her comfortable but not wealthy. And she's burned through most of it maintaining appearances. The country club membership. The charity donations. The designer clothes. It's all a facade. Which explains why she needs my house, your houses. Diana corrected. I found searches on her computer for your other properties. She knows about at least 3 of them. I felt a chill. How? Best guess, she hired someone to investigate you, probably looking for dirt for the divorce. But instead found out about your real net worth, which meant this wasn't just about greed anymore. Patricia knew I had money. Real money. The question was, how much did she know? And what was she planning to do about it? Keep digging, I instructed. I want to know every move they make. That night, I found Robert in the study going through my files. Though he didn't know, investment statements for properties he'd never asked about. Bank accounts he'd never known existed. Working late? I asked from the doorway. He startled, quickly closing the folder. Just organizing some paperwork. You know how cluttered things get. Find anything interesting? Just the usual. He forced a laugh. Insurance documents. Old tax returns. Boring stuff. I moved into the room, noting which folders he'd displaced. My property portfolio, including the apartment building in Chicago I'd just acquired. You know, I've been thinking about getting more involved in our finances. Maybe I could help organize things. No need, he said quickly, standing to block my view of the desk. I've got it handled. Why don't you focus on packing for your trip? About that, I said, watching his face carefully. I might need to access some funds while I'm gone. Should I take the credit cards? Or would you prefer I use the checking account? His pause was telling. The credit cards should be fine. Why would you need extra money? Oh, you know how it is with girlfriend trips, shopping, nice dinners. I wouldn't want to embarrass myself by not being able to keep up. Of course, he relaxed fractionally. Use whatever you need. Within reason, of course. Within reason. As if he had any right to dictate how I spent my own money. Later that night, I retrieved the folders he'd been examining. As I'd suspected, he'd been cataloging my assets. At least the ones he could find. Sticky notes in his handwriting marked various properties. Verify ownership. Check purchase date. Possible separate property. He was building a case for the divorce, trying to determine what he might be entitled to. The irony was delicious. Even if we divorced legitimately, the prenup he'd insisted on, to protect his hypothetical future earnings, would ensure he got nothing of mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Major development. Can you meet tomorrow? Urgent. I replied that I could, then deleted the conversation. Whatever Diana had found, it was significant enough to warrant an in-person meeting. The next morning, I met Diana at a small cafe downtown, far from our usual neighborhood. She was already seated in a back booth. Laptop open. They've escalated, she said without preamble, turning the screen toward me. This was filed yesterday. I read the document, my heart sinking. A petition for conservatorship, claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage my own affairs. Robert was requesting power of attorney over all my assets, due to my declining mental state and inability to make sound financial decisions. They're trying to declare me incompetent. I breathed. It's not filed officially yet, Diana clarified. This is a draft from Patricia's lawyer's computer, but Eleanor, if they can get a sympathetic judge, if they can create enough doubt about your mental state, they can take control of everything legally. I sat back, stunned by the audacity. When are they planning to file? November. After you've left for your trip, they'll claim you disappeared, that you've been showing signs of instability. Patricia has been telling people at the club that you've been acting strange, making wild claims about buying buildings, talking about conspiracies. The lunch at the country club. I'd thought I was planting seeds of financial independence, but Patricia had twisted it into evidence of mental decline. What do we do? I asked. Diana smiled grimly. We beat them to it, file our own papers first. And Eleanor, it's time to stop playing defense. She was right. I'd been so focused on documenting their crimes that I'd let them take the offensive. No more. Set up a meeting with all 3 attorneys, I decided, and contact the FBI about the wire fraud. If they want to play dirty, let's show them what dirty really looks like. As I drove home, I thought about the conversation I'd have to have with Robert that night. Not the truth. Not yet, but something to shake his confidence. To let him know that his meek, dependent wife was not quite what she seemed. The game was entering its final phase. 4 weeks until November. Until their carefully laid plans were supposed to come to fruition, they thought they were closing in for the kill. They had no idea that the trap was about to spring. That evening, I found Robert and Patricia in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table. They quickly gathered them up when I entered. But not before I glimpsed legal letterhead. And what looked like real estate contracts. Planning something? I asked pleasantly, settling into my chair with a glass of wine. Just some investment paperwork, Robert said. Nothing important, actually, I said, swirling my wine. I've been thinking about investments myself. Did you know that property fraud is one of the fastest growing crimes in America? Fascinating what people will try to get away with. Patricia's face went pale. What made you think of that? Oh, just an article I read. Apparently, people try to sell houses they don't own, take out loans on properties that aren't theirs. Can you imagine the audacity? Robert's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his own glass. That's terrible. I hope they catch people like that. They usually do, I assured him. Technology makes it so much easier to track financial crimes now. Digital footprints, security cameras, email trails. Criminals today have to be incredibly stupid to think they won't get caught. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Patricia was the first to recover. Well, that's why it's important to work with reputable people, she said. Lawyers, real estate agents, people you can trust. Absolutely, I agreed. Trust is everything. Without it, what do we have? I met Robert's eyes as I said it, holding his gaze until he looked away. I should check on dinner, he said abruptly, fleeing to the kitchen despite the fact that we'd already eaten. Patricia watched him go, then turned to me with narrowed eyes. You seem different lately, Eleanor, more assertive. Do I? I smiled. Maybe I'm just finally growing into myself. Better late than never, don't you think? She didn't answer, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Good. Let her worry, let her wonder, let her realize that maybe, just maybe, she'd underestimated the woman she'd tried to destroy. 4 weeks to go, and the real game was just beginning. The 4th week of October arrived with an unexpected cold snap, and with it, a series of moves that would fundamentally shift the balance of power. I sat in the conference room of Hartwell, Chain and Associates, Marcus's firm, surrounded by my team of attorneys and watching Patricia's face on the security monitor as she discovered her first unpleasant surprise. What do you mean my credit cards have been declined? Patricia's voice was shrill through the audio feed from the boutique. Try them again. The sales associate's response was politely firm. I'm sorry, ma'am, but all 3 cards are showing as frozen. Perhaps you should contact your bank. I turned to Marcus. How long before she figures it out? The conservatorship petition she was planning to file listed her as my proposed conservator, he replied. The counter petition we filed yesterday names her as a person of concern due to financial irregularity. The judge issued a temporary restraining order freezing any accounts where she's used funds connected to you or your properties, which would be all of them, I noted with satisfaction. For years, Patricia had been living off the largesse of my money filtered through Robert. Dinners, gifts, even her country club dues paid from our joint account that I funded. The best part, added Diana, who had officially joined my legal team as an investigator, is that the forensic accountants found something interesting. She's been claiming Robert's gifts as tax-exempt support from her son, while simultaneously treating them as income for credit application. That's tax fraud. On the monitor, Patricia was now on her phone, undoubtedly calling Robert. I switched feeds to his office where he was just answering. They know, Robert. Patricia's voice was panicked. My accounts are frozen. They said something about a restraining order. That's impossible, Robert replied, though his face suggested otherwise. Eleanor doesn't even know about. He stopped, suddenly aware he was in an open office. We need to accelerate the timeline, Patricia insisted. File the papers now while she's still here. We can't. Whitfield says the title issue needs to be resolved first, and Eleanor's still in the house. If we file now,
If we don't file now, we lose everything. I muted the feed and turned to my attorneys. They're getting desperate. What's our next move? Sarah Winters, the criminal attorney Marcus had brought in, pulled out a file. The FBI is very interested in the Hollock fraud. They're preparing arrest warrants, but they want to see if your husband and mother-in-law will take more concrete steps toward the property sale. A sting operation of sorts. We've had an agent posing as a cash buyer reach out to Robert directly, offered to buy the house as is. No questions asked. For $2.8 million cash, quick closing. No title search required. I raised an eyebrow. That's obviously suspicious. To a reasonable person, yes, but desperate people aren't reasonable. The agent is meeting with him tomorrow. My phone buzzed. A text from my housekeeper Maria, whom I'd asked to keep an eye on things. Mrs. Morrison is here with boxes. I switched back to the home security feed. Patricia was in my bedroom, systematically going through my jewelry box. She held up the pearl necklace my mother had left me, examining it before dropping it into her box. That's theft on camera, Diana observed. Another felony to add to the list. Let her take it. I decided. Everything she steals is being documented. Maria has the inventory list. We watched as Patricia moved through the house like she owned it, selecting items with a practiced eye. The Waterford crystal, the silver tea service, even the small Monet sketch from the hallway, all disappeared into her boxes. She's not even trying to be subtle, Marcus noted. It's like she thinks she's already won. Hubris, I replied. It's always been her weakness. The meeting continued for another hour, finalizing the details of what we'd dubbed Operation Homecoming. Every aspect had been meticulously planned, every contingency considered. By the time I left, the sun was setting, and I felt the weight of what was about to unfold. At home, I found Robert in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. The counter was a disaster of spilled ingredients and burnt pans. Let me help, I offered, genuinely amused by his incompetence. I wanted to surprise you, he said, frustration evident. I used to be able to cook. When I asked, taking over the stove. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never seen him prepare anything more complex than toast. Before we married, when I lived alone, I studied him as I salvaged what I could of his attempted stir-fry. You mean when you lived with Patricia until you were 32? He flushed. I had my own apartment for a few months. Ah, yes. The studio above her garage. How independent of you. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, and Robert's face darkened. Not everyone had to grow up as fast as you did, Eleanor. Not everyone lost their parents and had to fend for themselves. No, I agreed, plating the rescued dinner. Some people never have to grow up at all. They just transfer from one caretaker to another. What's that supposed to mean? I set his plate in front of him, with a smile. Exactly what it sounds like. Eat up before it gets cold. We ate in tense silence until Robert's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and declined the call. It rang again immediately. You should answer that, I suggested. It seems urgent. He stepped into the hallway to take the call, but I could hear Patricia's shrill voice from where I sat. Something about an emergency, about needing to meet tonight. I have to go, Robert said. When he returned, Mother needs me. Of course she does. I didn't look up from my plate. Tell me, Robert, what will you do when she's gone? Who will tell you what to think, what to do, who to betray? He froze in the doorway. What are you talking about? Just wondering about the future. Patricia won't live forever, you know. Although I imagine she's planning to outlive us both out of sheer spite. You've never understood my relationship with my mother, he said stiffly. She's always been there for me. Yes. Like a parasite is always there for its host. I finally looked at him. Tell me, when you were planning. Sorry. When she was planning and you were nodding along. Did either of you consider what would happen if I fought back? His face went pale. I don't know what you mean. No, then why are you sweating? He left without another word, practically running to his car. I cleared the dishes methodically, then went to my hidden office to watch the real show. Patricia's house was equipped with perfectly legal security cameras, installed by a company I owned. though she didn't know that. I watched as Robert arrived, as they huddled in her living room, surrounded by papers and laptops.
She knows, Robert was saying. The way she looked at me, the things she said. Eleanor knows. Impossible, Patricia snapped. You're being paranoid. She's exactly where we want her planning her little trip, oblivious to reality. You didn't see her tonight. It was like she was a different person. Good. Use it for the incompetency filing. Personality changes. Aggression. Paranoia. All signs of mental decline. I made a note for my attorneys. Everything they said was being recorded, their conspiracy documented in their own words. The doorbell rang on Patricia's security feed, and I watched her answer it. A man in an expensive suit stood on her porch, not the FBI agent. Someone else. Mrs. Morrison, I'm David Castell from Castell Realty. I understand you have a property you're looking to sell quickly. Patricia glanced back at Robert, then stepped aside. Please, come in. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in self-incrimination. Patricia and Robert laid out their entire plan, from the forged documents to the timeline of my supposed abandonment. Castell nodded along, occasionally asking questions that drew out more details. And your daughter-in-law, she's not aware of the sale. She will be by the time it's complete, Patricia said with satisfaction. By then, it'll be too late for her to do anything about it. The house is worth $3.2 million, Robert added. But we're willing to accept $2.8 for a quick, discreet sale. Cash only, Patricia insisted. No financing contingencies, no inspections. Can you handle that? Castell smiled. I believe I can. In fact, I have a client who specializes in difficult sales. He'll pay $2.5 million cash, close in 72 hours. 72 hours. Robert looked panicked, but Eleanor doesn't leave for another 2 weeks. That is a problem, Castell mused. Unless, is there any way to get her out of the house sooner? I watched Patricia's face transform with an idea. Actually, there might be. Eleanor's been acting erratically lately. If we could demonstrate she's a danger to herself or others. An involuntary psychiatric hold, Robert breathed. Mother, that's brilliant. My blood ran cold. They were planning to have me committed. I have a contact, Patricia continued, pulling out her phone. Dr. Brennan at Riverside Psychiatric. He's been very helpful with difficult situations in the past. Diana's voice crackled through my earpiece. She was monitoring the feed with me. Eleanor, we need to move now. This is conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. Wait, I said, watching as Patricia made the call. Let them finish hanging themselves. The conversation with Dr. Brennan was damning. Patricia promised a substantial donation to his facility in exchange for an emergency evaluation order. They discussed sedatives, transport arrangements, and how long I could be held without a formal hearing. 72 hours minimum, Brennan assured her. Longer if she's uncooperative. These cases of sudden onset dementia can be quite complex. Perfect, Patricia purred. We'll need you tomorrow evening. Can you arrange that? For you, Patricia. Of course. After Castell left with a promise to return with papers the next day, Patricia and Robert celebrated with champagne. My champagne, I noted, recognizing the bottle from my wine cellar. By this time next week, it'll all be over, Patricia said, raising her glass. The house will be sold, Eleanor will be getting the help she needs, and we can finally live the life we deserve. What about after? Robert asked. When Eleanor gets out. If she gets out, Patricia corrected. These facilities can be very thorough, and if she's truly unstable, which clearly she is, she might need long-term care. I know just the place. Very discreet, very secure. They were planning to lock me away permanently. The woman who'd taken me in, smiled at my wedding, pretended to be family. She was planning to have me disappeared into a psychiatric facility while she stole everything I'd built. I've seen enough, I told Diana. Contact the Tell them we need protection tomorrow, and arrest warrants for tomorrow night. On it, Diana confirmed. Eleanor, are you okay? I looked around my hidden office, at the monitors showing my home, my life, the empire I'd built while playing the role of the meek wife. I'm perfect. They want to play doctor? Let's give them a patient they'll never forget. The next morning, I woke early and prepared for what might be my last day in this house. As Eleanor Morrison, devoted wife. By evening, the masks would be off, the truth revealed, and the consequences unleashed. Robert was already gone when I came downstairs, fled in the night to his mother's, no doubt. But Maria was there, steady and reliable as always. Mrs. Morrison, she said quietly, I wanted you to know, I've seen what they take. I make note of everything, like you asked. I smiled at her. Thank you, Maria. After tomorrow, things are going to be very different around here. I want you to know your job is safe, no matter what happens. She nodded, understanding more than she let on. You are a good woman, Mrs. Morrison. They don't deserve you. No, I thought, heading to my office to make final preparations. They certainly didn't. I spent the morning coordinating with my team. The FBI agents were in position. My attorneys were ready with emergency injunctions. Diana had compiled a devastating dossier of evidence. Even the media had been quietly alerted. A friendly reporter who'd been following corporate fraud cases was standing by for an exclusive. At noon, I played my part perfectly, calling Robert to discuss dinner plans. I was thinking of making your favorite tonight. Beef Wellington? That's very thoughtful, he said, clearly confused by my cheerful tone. But actually, Mother and I have plans. Business dinner. Of course. Well, don't work too hard. See you later, darling. Eleanor? His voice was strange. I do love you, you know. Despite everything, I want you to know that. I know exactly how much you love me, Robert. I replied. Your actions have made that abundantly clear. I hung up before he could respond, then made one last call to Marcus. Is everything ready? Like clockwork, he assured me. Eleanor, after tonight, there's no going back. I know. I looked around the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals, hosted hundreds of gatherings, built a life that was about to shatter. I wouldn't go back even if I could. The afternoon passed slowly. I packed a small bag, not for Sarah's fictional visit, but for the hotel where I'd be staying once the arrests were made. I walked through my house one last time, saying goodbye to the woman who'd lived here in shadows, who'd accepted less than she deserved for the sake of a peace that never came. At 5 p.m., I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, waiting. The security monitors showed multiple vehicles taking position around the neighborhood, FBI agents in unmarked cars, my attorneys in a van down the street, Diana coordinating from her mobile command post. At 5:47, Patricia's Mercedes pulled into my driveway, followed by an ambulance, and Dr. Brennan's sedan. Through the window I could see Robert in the passenger seat, his face a mask of guilt and determination. They were coming to take me away, to lock me up and steal my life. I smiled, set down my teacup, and prepared for the performance of a lifetime. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. Showtime. I opened the door with the practiced smile of a woman who had no idea her world was about to be turned upside down. Patricia stood on my porch, flanked by Robert and Dr. Brennan, with two paramedics waiting by the ambulance in my driveway. The concern on their faces was almost convincing. Patricia, Robert, I said warmly, what a surprise, and you've brought friends? Eleanor? Dear. Patricia stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. We're here because we care about you. You've been under so much stress lately, and we think you need help. Help? I tilted my head, letting confusion cloud my features. What kind of help? Dr. Brennan stepped forward, all professional composure and rehearsed compassion. Miss Morrison, I'm Dr. Brennan from Riverside Psychiatric. Your family has expressed some concerns about your recent behavior. They're worried you might be experiencing a mental health crisis. A crisis? I laughed, the sound deliberately a bit too bright, because I want to learn about real estate, because I'm taking a trip to see my friend. Eleanor? Robert finally spoke, his voice strained. You've been talking about buying buildings. making wild accusations about property fraud. You've been paranoid, aggressive. This isn't like you. I let my smile falter, showing just a hint of vulnerability. I don't understand. I thought you supported my interest in investing. You said you were proud of me for wanting to learn. We are, Patricia interjected smoothly. But sweetie, you've been confused. You keep talking about owning things that aren't yours. The house, the cars. You know Robert bought all of those. Did he? I asked innocently. I could have sworn. See? Patricia turned to Dr. Brennan. She's confused about basic facts. Yesterday she told people at the club that she owned commercial real estate. The poor dear can barely balance a checkbook. Dr. Brennan nodded sagely. Memory confusion is often one of the first signs. Mrs. Morrison, would you be willing to come with us for an evaluation? Just to make sure you're okay. I took a step back into my house. I don't think that's necessary. I feel fine. Of course you do, Patricia said, following me inside uninvited. People experiencing episodes rarely recognize they need help. That's why we're here. The paramedics had retrieved a gurney from the ambulance, rolling it up my front walk with practiced efficiency. Through my peripheral vision, I caught movement in the shadows. My protection, waiting for the right moment. Robert, I said, turning to my husband with wide eyes. You can't really think I need to be hospitalized. Tell them I'm fine, please. He couldn't meet my gaze. It's for your own good, Eleanor. Just a few days for observation, then you can come home. After my trip, I asked, playing dumb. I can still go see Sarah. Patricia and Robert exchanged a look. We'll see, Patricia said. First, let's focus on getting you better. Dr. Brennan produced a clipboard. I'll need you to sign some voluntary admission papers, Mrs. Morrison. Standard procedure. I pretended to read them, noting the 72-hour hold authorization, the broad language about extended treatment, if deemed necessary. This says, you can keep me indefinitely, only if you're a danger to yourself or others, Dr. Brennan assured me, which I'm sure won't be the case. And if I refuse to sign, Patricia's mask slipped slightly. Eleanor, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way. The hard way being, Dr. Brennan shifted uncomfortably. If your family believes you're in immediate danger, I can authorize an involuntary hold based on their testimony. Their testimony, I repeated slowly. Tell me, doctor, how much is Patricia donating to your facility for this house call? His face flushed. I don't know what you're implying. Was it 50,000, 100? What's the going rate for false imprisonment these days? Eleanor, Robert stepped forward. You're being paranoid again. No one's being paid off. We're trying to help you. I laughed, then genuinely amused. Help me by locking me in a psychiatric facility while you sell my house. The room went very still. What did you say? Patricia's voice was ice. Oh, did I not mention? I moved to the mantel, where a small recording device sat in plain sight. They'd never noticed it among the decorative objects. I know about the meeting with Castell Realty, the $2.5 million cash offer, the 72-hour closing that coincidentally matches the psychiatric hold. Robert's face had gone white. How could you possibly know about that? I finished. The same way I know about the Halak you took out using forged documents. The same way I know Patricia's been stealing from my house for weeks. The same way I know you've been planning this since August. You're delusional, Patricia sputtered. These fantasies are exactly why you need treatment. Are they? I pulled out my phone, swiping to a video. Then I suppose this is a fantasy too. Patricia's voice filled the room from the recording. By this time next week, it'll all be over. The house will be sold. Eleanor will be getting the help she needs. And we can finally live the life we deserve. Then Robert's response. What about after, when Eleanor gets out? Patricia again. If she gets out, these facilities can be very thorough. Dr. Brennan was backing toward the door. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sit down, doctor. The voice came from behind him as FBI agents entered my home. Badges displayed prominently. Special Agent Sarah Kim, whom I'd been working with, took control of the scene with practiced authority. We'll be having a conversation about your involvement in this conspiracy. FBI, Patricia's voice cracked. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help a sick woman. The only sick thing here, Agent Kim interrupted, is your plan to defraud Miss Chen Morrison. of her legally owned assets, through false imprisonment and forged documents. Chen Morrison. Robert looked at me in confusion. My legal name, I explained calmly. Eleanor Chen Morrison. I never dropped my maiden name, just used Morrison socially to keep things simple. Like a lot of things I simplified for your benefit. Marcus entered then, followed by Diana and 2 more attorneys. The small army of professionals filled my living room, transforming it from a stage for my supposed breakdown into a legal confrontation. Miss Patricia Morrison, Agent Kim, announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, attempted grand theft, and false imprisonment. You have the right to remain silent. This is entrapment." Patricia shrieked, as an agent cuffed her. "She set us up. Robert, tell them." But Robert was staring at me with dawning horror. "The house, it's really yours. Everything is mine," I said quietly. "The house, the cars, the investment accounts, even the company that holds the mortgage on your mother's house. Oh, didn't she mention she refinanced last year? The lending company is one of mine." "That's impossible," he breathed. Marcus stepped forward with a thick folder. "Would you like to see the documentation, purchase records, title deeds, bank statements going back 15 years? Your wife has been very careful to keep everything in her name alone. But you were poor, an orphan. You needed me." "I was an orphan," I agreed. "But I was never poor, and Robert, I never needed you. I wanted you. There's a difference." Mr. Morrison, Agent Kim, turned to Robert. "You're also under arrest, same charges as your mother, plus forgery for the Hellick documents." As they cuffed him, Robert's legs gave out. The paramedics rushed forward, but I held up a hand. "Let him sit. He's fine, just shocked. Isn't that right, Dr. Brennan? No medical emergency here." The psychiatrist was being questioned by another agent, his medical license about to become worthless. The paramedics, innocent of the plot, were dismissed with apologies for wasting their time. "Eleanor," Robert looked up at me from where he sat on my Italian leather sofa, the one I'd bought at auction in Milan. Why let me think? Why pretend for so long?" I considered the question, the one I'd asked myself 1,000 times. "Because I loved you once, and I kept hoping the man I fell in love with would come back. But he never did. Did he? He got buried under his mother's ambitions, and his own greed. I never meant." "Stop," I held up a hand. "You meant every bit of, every lie, every betrayal, every moment you plotted to leave me homeless while I slept beside you. You meant it all." Patricia was screaming now, threats and curses that would only add to the charges against her. "You manipulative bitch. You pretended to be weak." "I never pretended to be weak," I corrected her. "You assumed I was because it fit your narrative. A woman without family must be desperate. A quiet woman must be meek. A generous woman must be foolish. Your prejudices blinded you to reality." Diana approached with an evidence box. "We've recovered all the items Mrs. Morrison removed from the house. The art, the jewelry, even the silver. It's all catalogued and photographed in her storage unit." "Thank you," I said, though honestly, the items mattered less than the principle. "Make sure it's all documented for the prosecution." As the FBI agents prepared to transport their prisoners, I had one last moment with Robert. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss of his illusions. "The prenup," he said suddenly. "You insisted on keeping our assets separate. I thought you were protecting me." "I was," I admitted. "From yourself. If I'd shared everything with you from the beginning, would you have loved me, or would you have just started spending sooner?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Patricia, however, couldn't resist one final barb as they led her past. "You'll be alone," she spat. "No family, no husband, just your money and your empty house." "I'd rather be alone than surrounded by parasites," I replied evenly. "Besides, I won't be alone. I have true friends, loyal employees, and a life built on something more solid than schemes and lies." The house emptied slowly as the various professionals completed their tasks. Marcus stayed behind, as did Diana, both wanting to ensure I was truly all right. "That was brilliantly played," Diana said, admiration clear in her voice.
The confused act at the beginning, you had even me, wondering if you'd really pull it off. 15 years of practice, I said, suddenly exhausted. I've gotten very good at being underestimated. Marcus poured me a scotch from my own bar, the good stuff I kept hidden from Robert. What now? Now, I accepted the drink gratefully. Now I stop pretending. The divorce will be straightforward given the criminal charges. The properties are already protected. The businesses continue to run. And I finally get to be myself. All of yourself, Diana added. No more hiding your success, your intelligence, your strength. It sounds terrifying, I admitted with a laugh, and wonderful. As they prepared to leave, Marcus handed me a card. My partner specializes in family law. She'll handle the divorce filing tomorrow. Given the circumstances, we can fast-track it. Thank you. I walked them to the door, pausing on the threshold. For everything, for believing me when I came to you with this insane story. Eleanor, Marcus said seriously, in 20 years of practice, I've never seen someone handle a betrayal of this magnitude with such grace and strategy. You didn't just protect yourself, you gave them every opportunity to stop, to choose differently. They hanged themselves. After they left, I stood in my empty house, truly mine now, no pretense needed. The silence felt different somehow, not lonely, but peaceful. No more wondering when the next manipulation would come. No more pretending to be less than I was. No more funding the lifestyle of people who plotted against me. I poured another scotch and raised it to the empty room. To new beginnings, I said aloud, and to the end of false imprisonments, both theirs and mine. My phone buzzed with messages. Sarah, my real friend, had seen the news alerts about the arrests. My employees at various properties were checking in, having been briefed that changes were coming. Even Victoria Ashworth from the club had texted, full of shocked questions and barely disguised glee at the scandal. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork, media attention, and gossip. The criminal trials would be lengthy and public. Robert and Patricia would face years in prison for their crimes, their reputations destroyed, their futures bleak. But tonight I sat in my beautiful home, sipped my excellent scotch, and felt the chains of 15 years falling away. They'd planned to leave me homeless, never knowing I'd been building homes, real and metaphorical, all along. The irony was delicious. In trying to take everything from me, they'd given me the one thing money couldn't buy, my freedom. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, no relation, despite the name, my therapist from before I met Robert. I'd stopped seeing her when he'd convinced me I didn't need outside help to be happy. Elizabeth, it's Eleanor. I know it's been a long time, but I was wondering if you had any openings. I think I'm finally ready to do the real work. Her warm voice was just as I remembered. Eleanor, I've been hoping you'd call. How about Thursday at 2? Perfect, I said, and meant. After all, I had a lot to unpack. 15 years of marriage, a lifetime of hiding my strength, and a future that was suddenly, brilliantly, entirely my own. But first, I had a call to make to Sarah, my real Sarah, not the fictional trip, to plan an actual visit. Maybe a month this time, or longer. I could work from anywhere, and I had properties around the world I'd never visited, because Robert preferred to stay close to his mother. The world was suddenly full of possibilities, and for the first time in 15 years, I was free to explore them all. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, adjusting the collar of my Chanel suit, one I'd bought myself years ago, but never wore, because Patricia always commented that it made me look like I was trying too hard. Today, I wasn't trying. I simply The prosecution is ready for you, Mrs. Chen Morrison, the bailiff announced. I nodded, taking a moment to center myself. Today was Patricia's sentencing hearing. Robert's had been last week. He'd pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 3 years, with possibility of parole in 18 months. His mother, however, had fought tooth and nail, convinced she could manipulate the justice system the way she'd manipulated her son. She'd been wrong. The courtroom was packed. Media coverage of the case had been extensive. millionaire heiress, hides fortune from greedy husband, made for irresistible headline. I'd turned down most interview requests, but had given one exclusive to a financial magazine about women protecting their assets in marriage. It had gone viral. Patricia sat at the defendant's table, orange jumpsuit, replacing her designer clothes, her perfect hair, now showing gray roots. She'd aged a decade in 6 months. When she saw me, her face contorted with rage, but her lawyer quickly whispered something that made her look away. Mrs. Chen Morrison, the prosecutor addressed me as I took the stand. Can you describe the impact the defendant's actions have had on your life? I looked directly at Patricia as I spoke. The betrayal itself was devastating. This was someone I'd welcomed into my family, trusted with my home, treated with nothing but kindness and generosity for 15 years. To discover she'd been plotting to have me involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility, potentially permanently, while stealing my assets, it's shaken my faith in people. Can you elaborate on the financial impact? The immediate theft was approximately $47,000 in personal items she removed from my home. The attempted theft through the fraudulent home sale would have been $2.5 million, but the real damage was to my business. When news of the false Hellock became public, I had to spend considerable time and resources reassuring my investors and partners that my companies were secure. The reputational damage to my real estate firm was significant. Patricia's lawyer stood. Objection. There's no evidence Miss Morrison knew about the plaintiff's businesses. Sustained, the judge ruled. Though he looked skeptical, I continued my testimony, detailing the emotional toll, the therapy sessions, the security measures I'd had to implement, the fear that someone else might try to exploit me. What I didn't mention was how liberating it had been, how the past 6 months had been the best of my adult life. When offered the chance to address Patricia directly, I stood and faced her. Patricia, I want you to know that I forgive you, I said, meaning it, not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only poison my future, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You taught me valuable lessons about trust, about the importance of being my authentic self, and about the dangers of hiding my strength to make others comfortable. For that education, I'm almost grateful. Patricia's face cycled through emotions: shock, rage, disbelief. She'd expected anger, revenge. Forgiveness was the one thing she couldn't counter. The judge's sentence was harsh but fair: 5 years for the combined charges, with eligibility for parole in 3. The formal restitution order included repayment of the stolen items, plus damages. Given that Patricia was broke, I'd never see a cent, but that wasn't the point. As court officers led Patricia away, she turned back one last time. He never loved you, she hissed. He only stayed for the lifestyle. I know, I replied calmly, just as you only loved him for what he could provide you, like mother, like son. Outside the courthouse, Marcus waited with Diana and my new publicist James Chen, another non-relative despite the name, which had become something of a running joke. How do you feel? Diana asked. Free, I answered honestly, ready to move forward. Speaking of which, James interjected, the Times wants to do a feature on your community development project, the one turning abandoned buildings into affordable housing. I smiled. That project had been born from dark humor. If Robert and Patricia had wanted to make me homeless, I'd make sure others never faced that fear. The irony had evolved into genuine passion. Set it up, I decided. But I want to include the stories of the residents, not just mine. We were interrupted by a familiar voice. Eleanor. I turned, to find Robert standing by a taxi, accompanied by his parole officer. He looked older, thinner, wearing ill-fitting clothes his mother would have mocked. 2 minutes, his officer said, checking his watch. Robert approached hesitantly. I wanted to apologize, properly, this time, in therapy, court-mandated. I've been working through things. How mother raised me, how I let her control me, how I betrayed the only person who ever truly loved me.
I'm glad you're getting help, I said, meaning it. The business degree you always encouraged me to finish. I'm enrolled. Online classes I can do while working. I'm at a hardware store now. It's honest work. Good for you. He shifted uncomfortably. I know I have no right to ask, but do you think you could ever forgive me? I studied the man I'd once loved, searching for traces of who he'd been. I forgave you months ago, Robert. But forgiveness and reconciliation are different things. I wish you well in building a new life, a real one, this time. His eyes filled with tears. I loved you, you know. I just loved the easy life more. I know, I said gently. That's what made it so sad. His officer called time, and Robert walked away. I knew I'd never see him again, and that was as it should be. That evening, I hosted a dinner party in my home, the first real entertaining I'd done since the arrest. My guests were an eclectic mix, fellow entrepreneurs, artists I'd started collecting, the contractor who'd helped rescue my kitchen from Robert's cooking attempt, even Victoria Ashworth from the club, who'd become an unexpected ally. I have to admit, Victoria said, surveying my living room, with new eyes, I never understood why you downplayed yourself so much. That painting, is that an original Basquiat? It is, I confirmed. I bought it at auction 10 years ago, but kept it in storage. Robert thought it was too aggressive for the living room. Men, she scoffed, then caught herself. Present company accepted, of course. The contractor, Marcus Reeves, laughed. No offense taken, though I have to say, Miss Chen Morrison, this house finally looks like someone actually lives here. He was right. I'd redecorated after Robert left, bringing out pieces I'd hidden away, adding colors Patricia had deemed unsuitable, creating spaces that reflected my actual taste, rather than the bland neutrality of compromise. Sarah, my real Sarah, visiting from Chicago, raised her champagne glass, a toast to Eleanor, for finally letting us see who she really is, and for teaching us all a masterclass in patience and strategy, added James, my publicist. As glasses clinked around me, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. These people knew me, the real me, and chose to be here anyway. Later, as the evening wound down, I found myself on the terrace with Sarah, looking out over the city lights. Do you regret the lost years? She asked. 15 years of hiding who you were. I considered the question. I regret that I felt I needed to hide. I regret not trusting Robert with my full self from the beginning. But if I hadn't lived through that, would I appreciate this freedom as much? Would I have learned to spot the Patricias of the world before they got close? When you put it that way, besides, I added with a grin, those 15 years weren't wasted. I built an empire while everyone thought I was playing housewife. That takes skill. Sarah laughed. Only you could turn systematic betrayal into a business advantage. My phone buzzed with an email from my attorney. The final divorce decree had been signed. I was officially, legally, entirely free. Good news? Sarah asked, noting my expression. The last paperwork just went through. I'm officially Eleanor Chen again. Morrison is gone. How does it feel? I thought about it. Like taking off shoes that never quite fit. You don't realize how much they hurt until they're gone. The next morning I woke early, as had become my habit, but instead of sneaking to my hidden office, I walked freely to the workspace I'd created in what used to be Robert's study. The walls now held my degrees, my business awards, photos from property acquisitions and groundbreaking ceremonies. My first call was to the architect working on my latest project, converting a historic building into mixed-income housing with ground-floor retail. We discussed sustainable materials, community spaces, the importance of dignity in design. You know, the architect said, when I first heard about this project, I thought it was guilt money. Rich woman feels bad, build some housing. But you really care about this. Everyone deserves a home, I replied. A real home, not just shelter. Somewhere they feel safe, valued, able to be themselves. Speaking from experience, you could say that. By noon, I was at the construction site, hard hat on, reviewing plans with the foreman. A reporter from the Times was there, as promised, but I directed her to interview Maria Santos, one of our first confirmed residents, a woman who'd left an abusive marriage with nothing but determination. People think being homeless means you failed. Maria told the reporter. But sometimes it means you chose freedom over security. Miss Chen understands that. I caught Maria's eye and nodded. Yes, I understood perfectly. The day flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and progress. This was who I'd always been underneath. A builder, a creator, someone who saw potential where others saw problems. That evening, I returned home to find a package on my doorstep. No return address, but I recognized Patricia's handwriting. Inside was my mother's pearl necklace, the one she'd stolen, and a brief note. I still think you manipulated everyone, but prison gives you time to think. Maybe I was the manipulator all along. The necklace belongs with you. P. It wasn't an apology, not really, but from Patricia, it was as close as I'd ever get. I clasped the pearls around my neck, feeling my mother's presence. The phone rang. Sarah, checking in as she did every evening now. How was your day? She asked. Productive. Meaningful. Mine, I answered. Everything I wasn't allowed to be before. Any regrets? Only one, I admitted. I wish I'd had the courage to be myself from the beginning. But then again, maybe courage isn't about being fearless. Maybe it's about being afraid and choosing truth anyway. When did you become so philosophical? Therapy, I laughed. Turns out, when you stop pretending, you have energy for actual introspection. After we hung up, I wandered through my house, truly mine now in every sense. In the kitchen where Robert had tried to cook that last meal, I made myself a simple dinner. In the living room where they'd tried to have me committed, I curled up with a book. In the office where I'd hidden my true self, I now displayed it proud. At my desk, I opened my laptop to review tomorrow's schedule. A breakfast meeting about a new acquisition. A lunch with potential investors for the housing project. An afternoon site visit to one of my commercial properties. Evening charity gala where I'd be honored for my philanthropic work, no longer as Mrs. Morrison, but as Eleanor Chen, entrepreneur and advocate. But first, one last task. I opened a new document and began typing. To those who hide their strength to make others comfortable. Your power doesn't diminish others. It inspires them. Your success doesn't threaten love. It attracts the right kind. Your authenticity doesn't destroy relationships. It reveals their truth. I spent 15 years making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I dimmed my light so others wouldn't feel overshadowed. I hid my victories so they wouldn't feel defeated. It nearly cost me everything. Not just my freedom, but my sense of self. If you're reading this while sitting in a house you bought but can't claim, driving a car you paid for but don't acknowledge, building dreams you can't share, the people who truly love you will celebrate your strength, not fear it. Those who need you weak were never worth your sacrifice. Be yourself, fully, proudly, unapologetically. The world needs your light undimmed. Eleanor Chen. I posted it on the blog I'd started for women in similar situations. Within minutes, comments started flowing in. Women sharing their own stories, their own fears, their own decisions to stop hiding. As midnight approached, I prepared for bed in the room I'd shared with a stranger for so many years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to be exactly who I was. Patricia had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by people who knew and valued the real me. The irony was perfect. In trying to leave me homeless, they'd helped me finally find my home. Not in the building, though I did love this house, but in myself. In the freedom to be Eleanor Chen, complete and undisguised. In the knowledge that I'd survived their worst and emerged stronger. As I drifted off to sleep, I smiled at one last thought. They'd planned to steal my house and leave me with nothing. Instead, they'd freed me from my cage and left me with everything. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, living freely, and living as yourself. And that's exactly what I intended to do. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.